The sound of a gunshot echoes, but that's not what draws the most attention. It's the crying. A small, fragile cry that seems out of place in that scene of smoke and debris. He drops his rifle for a second, something unthinkable for a soldier, in the middle of war, and runs, not to shelter, not to protect himself, but to a piece of fallen wall, behind which two children tremble, clinging to each other. The smell of gunpowder mingles with that of blood and dust. The roar of enemy engine approaches. He could run, no one would judge him, but there, kneeling before two lives that don't understand why the world is falling apart. He makes a decision that goes against every survival instinct taught in the barracks: to stay and protect. And, in that moment, he is no longer a soldier, he is a human shield, a living wall between horror and innocence. War engulfs entire cities, but he chooses to fight for a tiny space, the space of an embrace that tries to calm the fear of those who don't even know what an army is. Before that day, before becoming the soldier who carried children in his arms, as bullets tore through the air, he already knew the weight of war. It didn't start there. It didn't start with him. It began years before, when leaders in suits and ties decided on maps they'd never set foot on, borders redrawn by economic interests, promises broken, treaties signed at luxurious tables while entire families were driven from their homes. On a freezing October morning, troops crossed the border without warning, guided by speeches that spoke of liberation and protection. But what happened was the opposite. Villages were burned, schools became command posts, and children who once ran barefoot down dirt streets learned to hide in silence. He was sent as part of an operation officially intended to stabilize the region. But upon arriving, he saw that stability no longer existed. There was only fear, and fear is a language even a child understands. There, amidst ruins and torn political promises, a mission that wasn't written down was born: to save whoever could, still be saved, even if it cost them their own lives. If this story has already touched you, imagine what's to come. Stories that don't make the news, moments of humanity that resist chaos. Subscribe to the channel now, activate the bell, and leave a like. That way you'll help us bring more stories like this to the world. War doesn't stay on the map. It penetrates walls and pockets. When the gunfire ceases for minutes, the only sound left is that of empty bellies. Bread becomes expensive, gas vanishes, the line at the gas station stretches around the corner. Mothers count coins, shopkeepers lower their doors. Children do silent calculations, trying to guess how long until the next alarm. The soldier carrying children also carries this calculation. He knows that each explosion destroys a life and a market. He knows that each destroyed bridge becomes an extra hour in an ambulance. While he improvises shelter with broken doors, the world discusses numbers. No one discusses what doesn't fit into a spreadsheet: the hunger that bends the spines of those who remain, and those who remain learn to live among punctured flour sacks, unpredictable sirens, and measured steps. All around are windowless houses, and inside them, eyes searching for news that doesn't arrive right away. Those who can leave, those who can't wait, and waiting like this is also a form of fear. They say the war is far away, but its tentacles reach the kitchens of those who think they have nothing to do with it. Closed routes make freight more expensive, ports are lined up, insurance rates rise, ships wait. The price of a bag of wheat becomes a breakfast debate, even in cities without sirens. Supermarkets limit purchases, bakeries change recipes, restaurants cut portions. On the app, the price slides upward, and no one sees the crooked path that bread has taken. There are families who trade meat for potatoes, and potatoes for stale bread. Those with cars postpone visits. Those who depend on the bus pray for diesel. And all the while, the screen glows. There are speeches, graphs, promises. But the soldier looks at the children and sees not promises, but hunger. He sees the haste with which they slurp a thin soup, as if the future could fit in that bowl. In neighborhoods far from the front, schools hold raffles for lunch. It's not maps that pay the bill, it's hands that wash dishes and eyes that count. Change today. Faces shape statistics. A mother sells her wedding rings to pay for medicine. A grandmother keeps a photo of her grandson in her apron pocket and smooths the paper as if trying to warm her skin. A doctor improvises a post in a basement and learns to operate flashlights. A volunteer burns her hands lifting heavy pots to serve soup to 100 people. A soldier learns names. He knows who is the girl with nightmares and who is the boy who only sleeps leaning against his backpack when it rains. Buckets on the floor. He keeps scribbled notes in his pockets, drawings of houses with red roofs and trees that don't fall. One day, the girl asks if war also sleeps. He doesn't know how to answer. Another day, the boy asks if a tank feels fear. He smiles without showing his teeth and changes the subject. They embrace like someone holding a boat in a storm. In these moments, time slows down. The world boils down to spoons, soup, breathed, sipped, smiled. Those who see from the outside think it's not enough. Those who are inside know it's everything. Yes. While faces struggle to survive, speeches struggle to prevail. Air-conditioned rooms produce sharp sentences. There's talk of sovereignty, red lines, and self-determination. The same hands that draft resolutions press photo-op buttons. The neighborhood feels more than it understands. The bus is late. The power goes out. Some blame one side, others blame the other. But those stacking bricks to fill holes in the roof ask only one thing: when will this end? The soldier listens to radio stations in different languages and realizes that each antenna chooses a culprit. He doesn't have time for that. He needs to figure out how to heat a shelter without generating smoke. He needs to negotiate with the warehouse owner for 3 boxes of candles. He needs to convince the truck driver to turn around before the mind bridge. In the late afternoon, the smell of diesel fuel mingles with that of thin soup. He checks names, checks sheets, checks that no one is left behind, and he thinks about the question that echoes from wall to wall. Now, versions of the war compete like advertisements. There are video cuts that change meanings. There are phrases out of context. There are bots that spark fights at the same time. The line between information and propaganda becomes blurred. The soldier doesn't have time for that. He keeps in an envelope drawings he received from the children. There are colorful houses, a brown dog, a giant sun, and 2 dolls holding hands. When he opens the envelope, he remembers his reason for staying. And you, do you remember yours? Maybe that's why he insists on lighting candles at nightfall, even when the power returns for an hour. He knows that fear feeds on darkness. He knows that every child needs a small bedtime ritual. He tells short stories, teaches a song, marks a safety square on the floor. Outside, drones streak the sky. Inside, a girl asks to write her name in chalk. He hands her the chalk and holds the door. The world discusses hashtags. They discuss how to get through another night without losing anyone. In the shelter, the clock has become an enemy. They sleep in shifts, in breaths, in intervals between sirens. They share their bread with the girl who arrived today, carrying a bag containing a blouse, a toothbrush, and a wet notebook. She draws a picture of a window and asks if she can see the sea from there. The children laugh, and their laughter sounds like pots banging, lids closing, and a brief breeze. Outside, the night weighs heavy. The footsteps of patrols seem to come from all sides. On the radio, a cold warning tells them not to leave. He looks at the envelope with drawings, takes a deep breath, and grabs the door handle once more. When the wind blows through a crack, he prepares for another run. He knows that every calm second is a luxury that war doesn't allow. The children rest their heads on their knees, as if they could hide inside themselves. He counts to 10, and for a moment, everything seems possible. The warning gains momentum, the street gains shade, and the question returns, dry, unadorned, untheoretical. Who will be here when the sun rises? Who will be missing? Because, despite all the effort, despite all the courage, not all the children survived. Tomorrow may dawn with a silence heavier than any bombardment. Humanitarian corridors close overnight, and those who depend on them learn that hope can also become a target. Winter advances, water freezes in makeshift pipes, the generator fails. The infection that yesterday was just a fever today turns into pneumonia. When there's a shortage of fuel, there's a shortage of ambulances, and when there's a shortage of ambulances, there's a shortage of time. The soldier knows that time is the first resource war steals. He calculates routes by memory, because maps become obsolete in an afternoon. A building that was a shelter becomes a trap. A street that was safe becomes an exposed corridor. The clock never forgives. Every siren is a test. Every minute is a rare coin. What if tomorrow the children wake up and there's no soup, no candles, no him at the door? Who holds the doorknob then? Who says it's just a drill? Who repeats, without a trembling voice, that they'll get out of there in one piece? The paths are on the table, and none are clear. The diplomatic path demands a ceasefire, stable corridors, guarantees that don't fit into the vocabulary of those who fire. It requires neighbors willing to mediate, leaders willing to lose face, to save lives. It's a path of small steps, with long deadlines, and people bleeding in between. The violent path dispenses with phrases, and uses sieges, retaliations, calculated escalations, Each response widens the rift and pushes fear into homes. And then there's the unthinkable path, the one everyone swears won't happen until it does. A miscalculation, a projectile off course, a civilian target mistaken for an armored vehicle. The unthinkable is the point at which war stops negotiating and begins to devour its own future. Which of these paths is being taken now? Who is taking it for us? And when did we stop choosing? The world watches and participates even while feigning distance. Sanctions squeeze economies already struggling. Supply chains stretch, contracts change, prices midday. A cyber attack collapses a hospital thousands of miles away. A rumor fueled by fake accounts overturns a local election. A stalled ship rewrites the price of bread for an entire neighborhood. War infiltrates like a virus, using the veins of commerce, energy, and the internet. Those who think this is a matter on the other side of the map find the bill at the supermarket, at the gas station, at the rental. What if it's with us next? Time. What if the siren sounds in our city? What if the subway stops as a precaution? What if the power outage lasts for days? The soldier, who has no time for theory, looks at the children and asks, voicelessly, what will do when the storm changes direction? Who will open the door? Who will close it? He draws tomorrow with chalk on the shelter floor. He teaches the children to count steps to the exit, to take a deep breath before running, to hold the hand of the person next to them. He practices movements in 90 seconds, as if life depended on that number, and it does. He marks the safe zones with tape, protects the generator with sandbags, discusses with the baker how to grind grain without power. He learns to listen to the sound of the sky to distinguish rain from drones. Routine becomes training, and training becomes faith. But he's also human, and he gets tired. His shoulder aches, his vision blurs, his head weighs down with names and promises. When he closes his eyes, he sees lists. When he opens them, he sees faces. He knows that true heroes are those who return for another day, not those on the cover, and he dreads the day when his body says no before the siren says yes. Who holds the door if he falls? Who reads them bedtime stories? The abyss isn't a metaphor, it's geography. Mind bridges, fenced schools, warehouses that feed entire neighborhoods, becoming military targets. If no one does anything, tomorrow could bring more orphans than classes, more funerals than weddings, more broken promises than roof tiles. The city becomes a chessboard, and each human piece becomes worth too little. The soldier measures the risk and knows the choices are shrinking. Staying exposes, leaving condemns, waiting wears him down. He keeps in his pocket a drawing of a house with 2 windows and a tree. That's the most honest reconstruction plan there is. But plans need time, and time needs collective courage. Who will say enough before the ground gives way? Who signs the paper that stops the noise? Who accepts loss so someone can gain a living? Until the answer comes, he holds the doorknob with both hands. Inside, 5 steps and a blanket. Outside, an entire world in sight. Tomorrow could be worse, and it could be now. The war ends on paper before it ends in the heart. When the sirens fall silent, the silence doesn't return what was taken. The smells remain, the marks on the walls, the names missing from the roll call. The soldier who held the doorknob still hears footsteps in the hallway, even in the middle of a bright day. He knows that courage is no antidote to grief. He was a shield, a shelter, a voice that spoke calm. He was also human and failed, because no one wins all the time when the enemy is chaos. He remembers the eyes that never returned, the beds that remained made, the empty bowls lined up in the corner. The question that remains hurts because it's simple: what more could we have done? Who else should have shown up? Who chose to turn away? The war ends in agreements, but lives on in the memory of those who counted steps to survive. He keeps an envelope with drawings of houses and trees. He promises to remember names behind every line. He repeats that memory is care, and that care is justice. Yes, he collects the small rituals that saved entire nights, the whispered song, the chalk square on the floor, the soup divided into 5s and 7s. They are proof that humanity endures, even when the clock loses its rhythm. Still, when he lies down, he wonders if it was enough. The world debates who is to blame, but he has learned to count hands. Who brought water? Who donated blankets? Who opened the door? Who waited outside for others to pass? Perhaps the story needs to be told this way, through the sum of gestures that prevent a collapse. He walks down the street and sees hastily patched walls. He sees a stubborn clothesline in the burned yard. He sees a notebook drying in the sun. There, in the broken ordinary, lies the chance for a future. If no one cares for the ordinary, Abyss returns. He then writes on a piece of paper, care is a verb of war and peace, and he underlines it twice. He doesn't ask for applause. He asks for company. He asks for a possible gesture. Those far away can adopt a shelter. Those who are nearby can donate their time and hold up the line. One day someone will ask which side he was on. He'll answer that he was on the side of the children and the door. Some will find it little in a field where maps and numbers are valuable. He'll take a deep breath and say he held the doorknob until his fingers ached, that he traded candles, that he learned to recognize rain by its sound, that he taught people to count steps to the exit. There are victories that don't make it into photos. There are defeats that don't fit into headlines. Between one and the other lies the human interval where the future decides whether to stay. In this interval, he chose to repeat names aloud, so that absence wouldn't become a number. He chose to cook even without gas. He chose to sing without a voice. Each small choice raises a column, and each column supports a roof for another night. Perhaps politics discusses borders. He discusses the distance between a child and the safe door. Not all survived, and that weighs like a stone. Empty chairs sit in the shelter. He asks that the city not forget, and that one choose the side of care. Now when the city lights up signs, again there will still be windows without glass and tables with missing chairs. Rebuilding begins with a nail and a simple word. It begins with those who sweep the sidewalk, with those who hang out laundry to say that life still wants to go on. The soldier knows that rebuilding isn't done with concrete alone. It rebuilds with time, listening, and patience, with the right to make mistakes without being crushed, with the courage to ask for help, with neighbors who recognize each other again by name and laughter. He visits the shelter when the light returns and touches the wood of the door in gratitude. There is guilt and there is relief. There is mourning and there is warm bread. There is silence and there are children who play catch-up without looking up. The future will depend on how we deal with these contradictions. Whether we will punish fear or transform it into bonds. Whether we will care for the common before the next wind blows the roof down. He suggests that the school be a building to be built. The square gather without sirens. Telling the story generates care. The question that never ends is the same one. That begins everything. What made us capable of turning children into statistics? No ideology can answer it. No flag is enough. There are choices made in comfort that produce tragedies far from home. There are lies repeated until they become habit. There are gains counted in clean rooms while shelters count absences. The soldier doesn't debate theories. He points to an empty chair in the shelter and asks whose it belonged to. He shows a drawing of a sun and two windows and asks why it didn't fit in the news. He asks for a minute of silence, not out of ceremony, but to accommodate the pain that didn't fit in the busy days. With each name remembered, a wall straightens up again. With each hug offered, a street ceases to feel like a corridor. It's small compared to the scale of the damage. But this is where change begins, when the big words disappear and only people remain trying to hold the door open. You who listen can decide not to turn your face away. Turn a number into a name. Start today, in your time now. Perhaps the only possible victory is admitting that we don't know how to win alone. Peace isn't a decree. It's a daily work, made of concessions, sacrifices, and hands holding other hands. The soldier will one day put away the doorknob. Children will grow up and trade chalk for crayons. Some will still feel fear when the wind whistles. Others will sleep peacefully. This difference depends on who listens now, on who can vote, donate, pressure, and welcome, on who can teach that care is strength. The world is big, but a door is a small universe. If each door has someone willing to hold it, perhaps the abyss will retreat a step. And if each door remains empty, perhaps it will advance too. The question we carry to bed is simple and relentless. Have we learned anything, or are we repeating everything all over again? Tomorrow, when the city wakes, someone will need a hand on the doorknob. It could be near or far. If doubt gnaws at you, remember the drawing with the sun and two windows, and choose to hold it now.